internet has changed everything. Our way of communicating, of consuming, of cultivating our minds, and of paying. Now, whether it's euros, dollars, or yuan, the vast majority of the world's money is digital, held on servers. In just a few years, with the rise of the web, money has changed. It has become virtual. Welcome to a new monetary age. But what value can we put on a money that doesn't exist? How can we have confidence in virtual currencies that can be issued with just a few lines of code? And what reassurance is there that our payment and transaction details won't fall into the wrong hands? These questions have occupied a group of computer scientists since the 1980s. One of them, a certain Satoshi Nakamoto, came up with a radical answer. A simple computer program that would have a phenomenal impact. Bitcoin. In 1993. The World Wide Web was just 3 years old. Only 600 websites were available online. But already, a group of programmers foresaw a future where our lives would be totally digital. The cypherpunks. In the digital world, every action leaves a trace. Our discussions, our work, our hobbies, our purchases. Goodbye to secrecy and privacy. So Eric Hughes, an American mathematician and developer, decided to put a cypherpunks manifesto online. A short text that set out the bottom line for this coding resistance, protecting privacy on the network. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large faceless organizations to grant us privacy out of their beneficence. Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy, and we're going to write it. The main tool in this defense, the shield brandished by the cypherpunks, was cryptography, a discipline that had made enormous progress since the appearance of the first computer in the 1970s.
Cryptography is the art of scrambling information to make it unintelligible except to those that have the right key to unscramble it. The cypherpunks, a group of activists in the San Francisco Bay Area, were quite interested in promoting strong encryption.
Using the possibilities offered by computer science and cryptography, the cypherpunks fashioned new digital tools. Software for surfing the web anonymously, private messaging, and communication programs.
And out of this movement came many attempts to recreate various fundamental institutions of society using the complex mathematics of cryptographic systems. So things like voting systems and, of course, money.
The cypherpunks were a group of individuals who felt that cryptography could enable new human freedom, that freedom to communicate and the freedom to send money. And there were many different versions or ideas behind, like digital cash.
It was only natural that the cypherpunks should also be the first to experiment with digital currencies. Their declared aim was to free citizens from gatekeepers such as banks and governments. What they feared most of all was an ultra-centralized, dematerialized monetary system. A system where every purchase, every money transfer was recorded and held on a central file controlled by a private bank or even a state.
They believed that true human expression is really only possible when you can protect your anonymity. Only at that moment are you really able to speak truly.
For the cypherpunks, it was essential to create a monetary tool that was completely secure and anonymous, where trust would be guaranteed by the network itself. It was a precondition for freedom. This quickly became a race to be the first to code this revolutionary monetary system.
From the late 80s onwards, there were dozens of attempts to create digital money using cryptography.
There were lots of failures. For years, none of the attempts were convincing. Certain obstacles seemed insurmountable, particularly that of double spending.
The double spending problem, as it's called, is this idea that digital information is easy to copy. And if you have a form of digital money, how can you keep track of that money and make sure it's only spent once? Now, with physical paper money, when you give it to someone, you no longer have it. But in the digital realm, you can give someone a copy of something digital, a perfect copy that is indistinguishable from the original, and still keep the original. Now there are two copies. What if you then give it to someone else again?
In the digital world, everything is infinitely reproducible. Solving the double spending problem meant finding a way of creating digital uniqueness, making copy-pasting obsolete. Without that, Bitcoin could not exist.
C'était technologiquement très complexe à résoudre, donc ça a mis des décennies pour arriver. Bitcoin, c'est le fruit de dizaines d'années de réflexion, d'acteurs passionnés, et aussi d'un mouvement idéologique, peut-être libertarien, cypherpunk derrière.
These are the individuals who had built precursors to Bitcoin, but these precursors hadn't been successful. They sort of, if you think of Bitcoin as a new species of money, these species died on the operating table. They never really made it out of the lab. The cypherpunks wanted to create a digital cash, but they had no idea how money worked. They knew how cryptography worked, but they had very poor understanding of economics, monetary policy, and money. Satoshi did.
On October 31st, 2008, the coder Satoshi Nakamoto posted a message on the cryptography mailing list, an email list for cryptography geeks to exchange information. In it, the enigmatic Satoshi explained his digital currency project called Bitcoin.
Bitcoin est né en 2008, donc pile pendant la crise. Est-ce un hasard ou pas, c'est difficile à dire. Je pense que ça faisait plusieurs années qu'il y avait une forme de défiance aussi vis-à-vis du système financier traditionnel.
Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. There had been massive bailouts. It was a huge, super stressful time period in the world. And Satoshi waited for that exact moment because it sounded like, based on his writing, that he had completed Bitcoin a little bit before that and was waiting for the peak moment of despair in the financial markets to press the send button.
With the global economic crisis raging and the banks becoming public enemy number one, Satoshi Nakamoto published his white paper, an 8-page document that set out precisely how Bitcoin would work. The aim of this new currency was to bypass traditional financial players.
The first people that heard about Bitcoin typically scoffed at it. They thought it was a joke or they didn't think it was going to work. A few months later, he released the code and then started to tinker with it.
When the program was launched on January 3rd, 2009, Satoshi inserted in the code a headline from the Times referring to a bank bailout by the British government.
UK Chancellor on the verge of second bailout for banks. So he's very much, this is a very aggressive stance, anti-banking, anti-central banking, anti-government. In his writings, he goes, the core root of the problem with money is it requires trust to make it all work. We must trust the banks. We must trust the merchant processors. We must trust the central banks. And he goes, with Bitcoin, we remove that needed element of trust. Bitcoin's network wasn't in a state of too much testing for that long of a time. It was in a state of like very active development and in production.
A handful of coders took an interest in the project and offered to help Satoshi. Among them was Hal Finney, programmer from the West Coast who was passionate about cryptography.
Satoshi was asking for help in terms of people needed to help him get it all built and help mine it and kind of incept it. And so Hal and Satoshi worked together, and Satoshi sent him the first ever Bitcoin transaction.
Without ever meeting in real life, Satoshi and Hal succeeded in directly exchanging bitcoins without a risk of double spending. The invention worked. But how did they pull off this masterstroke?
Alors, ce qu'a fait Satoshi, c'est qu'il a combiné très intelligemment des technologies assez complexes et des connaissances économiques pour mettre en place un système informatique qui permette d'encourager une communauté à gérer cette crypto-monnaie. Donc, Bitcoin fonctionne avec ce qu'on appelle une blockchain, la blockchain Bitcoin. La blockchain Bitcoin, c'est quoi? En fait, c'est simplement un grand registre qui va répertorier toutes les transactions faites en Bitcoin. La grande différence avec ce qui se passe d'habitude avec l'euro ou avec le dollar, c'est que ce registre, il va être stocké sur un grand nombre d'ordinateurs, de serveurs qui vont être répartis partout sur la planète et qui vont se mettre à jour de manière automatique, sans avoir besoin d'intervention humaine. Pour la première fois, on a une monnaie qui n'est pas gérée par une banque centrale, mais qui est vraiment gérée par une communauté.
And because everybody's verifying everybody, and because nobody trusts anybody, we can all trust the ultimate result because it's being checked by so many thousands of computers, because it's so difficult to tell a lie on the Bitcoin network.
Il y a une intuition qui est révolutionnaire, c'est d'avoir décidé par un acte proprement souverain que on allait faire payer le coût d'entretien du système, ce que d'autres avaient déjà imaginé, en le rémunérant avec la monnaie du système.
On the 5th of October 2009, the new Liberty Standard website gave Bitcoin a value for the first time. With $1, you could get 1,500 Bitcoins. At last, there was a bridge between the good old dollar, traded all over the world, and the cryptocurrency imagined by Satoshi. Bitcoin had acquired a real value. Maintaining the network by running Satoshi's program and being rewarded with freshly minted Bitcoins became financially attractive. Because at the heart of how Bitcoin works, one particular process plays a fundamental role: mining.
What's mining? It's a big question, you know. It's an industry and it's a bit of a philosophy also, but most of all, it's like the cornerstone of Bitcoin technology. It's a currency system, right? So in the currency system, you either own currency or you're sending it. That's pretty much all you do with currency, right? And how you would usually build that into a computer system is that you have a database, and this database lists like who owns how much money. And when someone wants to send money, you just change the database, right? But if you want to do it in a decentralized way, like Bitcoin does it, then you don't have just one party that makes these changes. Everyone has to ensure it at the same time. So all the participants in the Bitcoin ecosystem store a copy of the same database, and when someone wants to make a transaction, which is to change the database, then he has to coordinate with everyone else to make sure that everyone agrees that this is a kind of okay thing to do.
Roughly every 10 minutes, a block containing on average between 1,000 and 2,000 transactions is validated by mining. These new transactions are added to the Bitcoin ledger, called the blockchain. So called because each block is linked to the others, like the links in a chain. The Bitcoin blockchain becomes a tamper-proof public register because it is constantly checked by thousands of computers around the world. But how do you manage a decentralized register without slipping into anarchy? How do you choose who can add the latest transactions to the Bitcoin ledger? For Satoshi, the answer was simple. Just hold a digital lottery for each block.
The network kind of creates a very complex mathematical riddle that someone has to solve in order to progress the blockchain, to create a new block in the blockchain about every 10 minutes. And whoever finds the result of this riddle It's like searching for a needle in a haystack kind of riddle. You know, gets to decide what happens in the next 10 minutes of the Bitcoin network.
Whoever finds this needle in the haystack earns Bitcoins and the right to record the latest transactions in the immense ledger. To falsify a transaction, you would need to control more than half the network's computing power. Given the number of computers running the program today, that is practically impossible. And the more computers there are on the network, the more robust Bitcoin becomes.
As more energy is expended to validate more and more blocks in the blockchain, in order to change the past, you have to revalidate all of the blocks since that moment in the past. And in order to do that, you have to spend all of that energy again.
Those who mine Bitcoin are like modern-day gold prospectors. And they too are called miners. Like prospectors, the more resources and machines a Bitcoin miner has, the greater chance they have of winning the mining lottery and earning Bitcoin. Things have escalated since 2009. At the beginning of the network, it was possible to mine Bitcoin with a simple home computer. But now, miners have professionalized. Their mines are more like energy-hungry data centers than homemade rigs.
People are worried that Bitcoin mining is using too many natural resources and is polluting the environment disproportionately. Of course, they're right. Sure, it's using power, of course. It's not a free resource. But we have to see it not only as a cost, but we have to see it as an investment, right? So we're let's say, spending all this power and energy on Bitcoin. What are we getting? People are not yet en masse seeing the, let's say, the kind of philosophy behind it, this cypherpunk kind of idea, you know? The idea of owning your data, the idea of being decentralized, being decoupled from the banks, to revolutionize our old systems and bring it back in the hands of the people. All these great ideas.
In order to become a dependable, autonomous monetary system, Bitcoin has to use a considerable amount of energy. But what advantages does it have over our traditional payment methods? Why do we need money that bypasses the banks?
Et Bitcoin, c'est pas devenu une monnaie du jour au lendemain. D'ailleurs, c'est même pas évident qu'on puisse dire aujourd'hui que c'est une monnaie. De mon point de vue, c'est plutôt une monnaie en devenir. C'est-à-dire, c'est quelque chose qui est en train de devenir une monnaie progressivement. Pourquoi ? Pas parce que l'État, à un moment donné, dit « voilà, ça c'est une monnaie », mais parce que, tout simplement, de plus en plus de gens décident de l'utiliser comme monnaie.
On May 22nd, 2010, a web surfer called Laszlo Hanyecz decided to buy 2 pizzas using Bitcoin.
And so Laszlo put out a message on the forums, the Bitcoin Talk forum, and said, hey, I'd like to buy a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. And someone said, sure, well, send me your address and I'll send you a pizza and then you can send me the Bitcoin. And so that was the first ever paid Bitcoin transaction, supposedly the first ever transaction for value. A very expensive pizza.
10 years later, with prices soaring, the 10,000 Bitcoins Laszlo Hanyecz spent now represents $90 million. $90 million for 2 pizzas. In any case, this was the moment that marked the beginning of Bitcoin as a real usable currency.
Sur quoi repose une monnaie ? Elle repose sur la confiance de ses utilisateurs. Et la question, c'est sur quoi repose cette confiance ? Pour les monnaies actuelles, les monnaies étatiques, on a confiance dans ces monnaies parce que ces monnaies sont émises par l'État, on peut payer nos impôts dans cette monnaie et l'État garantit une forme de monopole de ces monnaies sur le territoire national.
For thousands and thousands of years, money was something that was transacted freely, anonymously, person to person, in the form of something that was universally recognized, something like gold. Money that exists only through the use of plastic cards or paper and fabric that is strictly controlled by a centralized unit of government, that is limited to one nation only, difficult to recognize, illegal in many cases to transport across borders, and very strictly regulated. Historically, that hasn't existed for very long.
Anonymous, decentralized, impossible to censor. The cypherpunk philosophy embedded in the very code of this new currency was certain to appeal to dubious characters. people no one wanted in traditional banking networks.
$20 secure phones to assist in staying anonymous, $5,000. Fighting legal cases across 5 countries, $1 million. Upkeep of servers in over 40 countries, $200,000. Donations lost due to banking blockade, $15 million. Added cost due to house arrest, $500,000. Watching the world change as a result of your work? Priceless. There are some people who don't like change. For everyone else, there's WikiLeaks.
December 2010. At the request of the US government, Visa and MasterCard, players in the old world money market, blocked all transfers of money to WikiLeaks, the whistleblower site developed by Julian Assange. This was the beginning of a veritable financial blockade intended to drain the organization's accounts.
Different governments around the world pressured PayPal and Visa and other payment providers to censor their transactions because WikiLeaks was deemed dangerous for leaking confidential government information. And so WikiLeaks turned to Bitcoin, which is permissionless, as a way to accept donations. And I think that was another really cool testament to Bitcoin's resiliency and use case of permissionless money. No one can take that money away from you and no one can stop it from being sent to you.
Bitcoin donations poured in, and the operation to save the site was a success. Thanks to the equivalence between Bitcoin and the dollar, WikiLeaks was able to stay afloat, and neither governments nor companies could stop it. This also gave Bitcoin unprecedented publicity.
You know, Satoshi had created this new money, and he was very much worried that they were kicking the hornet's nest, is how he put it, at too early of a stage in the project, and that they may not survive a government attack. Luckily, governments didn't really care about Bitcoin at that time, and Bitcoin has survived. He also, I think, close to that time, started to question if he should be part of the project, and so Satoshi eventually disappeared.
Satoshi Nakamoto ceased all communication in the spring of 2011. He wrote no more messages, public or private, and gave no further signs of life. At the same time, in February 2011, a new online trading site called Silk Road appeared on the dark net, an uncontrolled, anonymous area of the internet. And Bitcoin, whose public, traceable, yet encrypted ledger allows transactions to be made under a pseudonym, was tailor-made as a currency for criminals.
You can get anything on the internet nowadays. Cars, homes, and now, black tar heroin. This is Silk Road, the anonymous marketplace. It's a 4-month-old website boasting thousands of members. On the main page, they proudly and openly sell LSD, marijuana, and ecstasy.
In February 2011, Bitcoin achieved parity with the dollar. Driven by Silk Road, its value soared. Over the next 2 years, all sales on Silk Road were made in Bitcoin. 1.2 million transactions worth a total of 9.5 million Bitcoins, so more than $1 billion in transactions. This cryptocurrency was clearly no longer a little experiment by isolated programmers. Thanks to WikiLeaks and Silk Road, Bitcoin obviously attracted attention, but with it a lot of bad press. At the end of 2013, the founder of Silk Road, Ross Ulbricht, was arrested and later sentenced to life imprisonment. Silk Road closed. Many of Bitcoin's defenders were worried. According to certain experts, the site accounted for almost half of all Bitcoin transactions in the world. Its closure dealt a severe blow to the cryptocurrency. Bitcoin's value fell by nearly 20% after the site closed. But despite the bad buzz, it rose again.
That was a pretty wild year because from the start of the year to the end of the year, Bitcoin went from $10 to 1,000, which is a 100-fold return. And that was really wild because there was only a dozen of us who would show up to the Bitcoin meetup in San Francisco. And that was, in January 2013. And then in March, when the price hit 260, there was 100 people. And it was just crazy, and there was VCs handing out business cards. And we were like, oh, but this Bitcoin thing is becoming real. People talked about Bitcoin to the US Congress. There was a lot of companies that raised money to go build products and services. Bitcoin hitting $1,000 really blew people's minds that this was like a new technology, a new valuable money.
Of course it's growing, right? More and more people are hearing about it, the philosophy behind it, with owning your own data and being against the banks.
But how can this enthusiasm be explained? Why does the value of this virtual object break so many records? Part of the answer probably lies in the way Bitcoin is issued. Unlike traditional currencies, which are issued without limits, the number of Bitcoins created each day decreases over time. Production stops definitively on the day 21 million have been created. Like gold, Bitcoin is scarce, and the first nuggets now have an unimaginable value. The very first transfer of 10 Bitcoins from Satoshi Nakamoto to Hal Finney in 2009 is now worth several $100,000.
Satoshi's brilliance was in the monetary policy. He invented, pure digital scarcity with Bitcoin's 21 million hard cap. There will only be 21 million, there will never be more.
Et donc, les bitcoins existants auront plus de chances de conserver de la valeur, voire d'en prendre, ce qui est en train de se passer, plutôt que de voir leur valeur diminuer dans le temps.
The soaring price of Bitcoin can drive its followers crazy. Take English programmer James Howells, who was stunned when he realized in 2013 that he had thrown away a hard drive containing the private key to his Bitcoin wallet.
When I started to hear stories of the Silk Road shut down and obviously other individuals making their profits and their millions, the penny dropped then, that I had 7,500 Bitcoins on a hard drive that I'd thrown out a few months ago.
But to get your money, you would need that hard drive?
Yeah, there's a specific file on that hard drive called a wallet file, which the Bitcoin is stored in. And without that file, there is no way of getting the money back because there is no central server that records a log of it.
So a Bitcoin wallet is the analogy of your bank account, but you're in control of it yourself. You can hold the password, the private key, yourself, not share it with anyone else, but you can share other people like a view access, which is like the public key. And you can give everyone this view access to show how much coins you have or to allow them to transact with you, but not your private key, which you use to actually unlock your wallet to send funds.
Each Bitcoin wallet has unique public and private keys. The public key is the equivalent of your bank account number. It allows you to see the contents of your wallet and to deposit Bitcoins. The private key is your password. It allows you to access the Bitcoins in your wallet, and whoever has the key controls the contents.
And what's cool about that is no one else in the world can get to your Bitcoin unless they have that private key, which is both a good and a bad thing. If you lose your private key or you forget the password that encrypts your private key, well, it's lost for all eternity.
I do my banking online with a banking app on my iPhone. If I lose my iPhone or it breaks, I still have full access to all the money in the bank because I trust the bank and they're not going to say, well, unless you can prove that you're you because of a cryptographic key stored in your iPhone, we're not going to let you have your money. No, banks don't behave that way, but not so with Bitcoin. No, if I lose the Bitcoin wallet, oops, it's gone.
And that's the thing, right? In a decentralized system, there's no central entity that you have to trust to make it work. It's got pros and cons. There's also no one that you can write an email to. There's no support service that can help you.
How do you feel stood here?
Well, absolutely devastated, as you can imagine. I just wish I could go back in time and not throw that drive away.
In 2017, when one Bitcoin was worth $20,000, everyone wanted to get into cryptocurrencies. Thousands of projects appeared, promising outrageous returns, and there were takers. At the beginning of 2018, the total capitalization of altcoins, the 2,000 existing alternative cryptocurrencies, reached $800 billion.
People are looking at Bitcoin, seeing how it's exploding in price, and they think, oh, you know, I really missed out on this one. I should have bought in. And then they're looking for the next best opportunity to invest in something else, to hopefully have the same price increase as with Bitcoin. And ready for those guys are the altcoins.
In 2017, and previously to that in 2014, we also saw the emergence of many other competing systems that are trying to capture the magic of this idea and either are genuinely trying to make new things with it, or in many cases are fraudulently trying to capture the enthusiasm without any substance.
Bitcoin a des limitations, mais qui sont assumées. C'est-à-dire que on ne peut pas faire des milliers de transactions par seconde sur Bitcoin, et on ne peut pas programmer les transactions d'une manière très sophistiquée. Donc les autres crypto-monnaies ont essayé d'améliorer ces aspects de leur côté. Simplement, elles ont dû faire des concessions en termes de niveau de sécurité ou en termes de complexité, parce qu'on ne peut jamais gagner sur tous les tableaux.
Then came the crash. In February 2018, Bitcoin lost more than 70% of its value, and all the other cryptocurrencies followed suit. A massacre. New buyers who understood little about how digital currencies work took fright and sold their holdings quickly and at the lowest price. The debacle was widespread. In just a few months, the cryptocurrency market dropped by $700 billion. An apocalypse. Even so, Bitcoin was not wiped out when the cryptocurrency bubble burst. Satoshi Nakamoto's invention is not just a currency. Its technology opens up other possibilities. Welcome to the wonderful world of the blockchain.
By the end of 2017, I was living in the Bay Area near SF. I remember being at a house party, and suddenly every single person in this room, 8, 10 people, all of a sudden, every single person worked in blockchain. They were like, yes, my company pivoted. Yes, I just joined a new company. Okay, I'm a designer for a new protocol. I was so confused. It was such a surreal experience for me because I was like, wait, just a few months ago, I was asking people, what is this thing? And nobody knew.
With Bitcoin, there is no need for a bank, no need for an intermediary. Satoshi Nakamoto's technology builds the trust indispensable for any exchange into a computer program and a network. The blockchain, a decentralized, constantly checked ledger, is the key to this digital revolution.
La blockchain, c'est un terme un petit peu ambigu, parce qu'il y a deux significations possibles. Au sens strict, c'est le registre qui dit combien de bitcoins appartiennent à qui à chaque instant. Et au sens plus général, c'est l'ensemble de technologies qui permettent de sécuriser ce registre qu'on appelle la blockchain.
La blockchain en soi, c'est pas tellement révolutionnaire. Ce qui est révolutionnaire, c'est l'idée de consensus décentralisé.
Finding systems that decentralize trust and that actually remove the need for trust, because you can verify, you don't need to trust anymore. This is amazingly powerful. With a bit of thought and with a bit of understanding of the philosophy behind the blockchains and what they can actually provide, you can really see how a blockchain is an incredibly powerful base layer for many other potential applications in the future.
If the blockchain makes autonomous currency transactions possible, why not other kinds of exchange with other information in other sectors? Insurance, copyright, property deeds, the food supply chain. For blockchain's promoters, the potential of this new technology appears endless.
Ces technologies-là, elles bouleversent vraiment le milieu financier, le milieu bancaire, qui s'est penché dessus assez tôt. Il y a aussi naturellement le milieu assurantiel qui va être impacté, puisque l'assurance, c'est quoi? C'est des transactions conditionnelles. Donc c'est de se dire, je vais rembourser mon assuré s'il se passe telle ou telle chose. Et ça, on peut le gérer dans une blockchain avec ce qu'on appelle des smart contracts, donc des programmes qui vont permettre d'automatiser des transactions. On a aussi le secteur du gaming, par exemple, pour qui c'est très intéressant, puisque dans le secteur du gaming, aujourd'hui, on a des jeux qui sont gratuits, mais dans lesquels les joueurs vont acheter des bots pour leur personnage ou des épées, etc. Donc des actifs numériques qui ont une valeur et qui aujourd'hui sont en fait prisonniers du jeu. Et donc l'idée de mettre en place des applicatifs sur blockchain dans le secteur du gaming, c'est très intéressant puisque les joueurs pourraient se revendre ensuite entre eux ces actifs, voire même les sortir du jeu, les faire fonctionner dans d'autres jeux, etc. Donc c'est très transverse finalement ces technologies puisque ça touche à tout ce qui a de la valeur numérique.
In certain cases, blockchain can be extremely relevant, but often it is simply used as a marketing pitch, when a traditional database would do the job just as well.
Il y a eu une hype médiatique autour des blockchains en 2015, 2016, 2017. Et du coup, beaucoup de gens se sont fait une image un peu fausse de ces technologies. Ça a une certaine valeur ajoutée dans un projet. Ça va permettre de créer un écosystème avec de la valeur numérique qui va être beaucoup plus décentralisé que si je mettais tout dans ma propre base de données. Mais la blockchain, c'est pas la magie, tout simplement.
Everybody is so excited about blockchain that they kind of lose their minds. If you have a bicycle shop and you rename the bicycle shop the blockchain bicycle shop, then your stock goes up in price, right?
Startups had an incentive to put the word blockchain in their fundraising deck because then they could raise twice as much money. Big corporate companies like IBM, Deloitte, these massive consultancies, and large investment banks, they were incentivized to use the word blockchain because you could sprinkle it on your company strategy. And so when anyone asked, what is your strategy for innovation? It was one word, blockchain.
Blockchain will change the world. Blockchain.
Better yet, you can also sprinkle some AI, a bit of quantum, and you've got half the startup field out there. You can say our AI quantum blockchain does something, but you still haven't solved anything interesting.
In reality, when you try to apply blockchain technology to other things, you realize how intricate and how woven together all the components of a blockchain are. You can't just take out a piece. You can't just take out an engine and just hope that you can use that to go somewhere.
Évidemment, le terme blockchain n'a pas été promu par hasard. Il a été promu aussi en raison du caractère dérangeant et sulfureux de Bitcoin. Comme si Bitcoin représentait un tabou et qu'on avait besoin de trouver un autre terme pour parler de cette révolution en cours.
5 years on, blockchain technology has not really kept its promise. It is rarely used. Cryptocurrencies, on the other hand, are in the spotlight. Financial institutions, big corporations, states, everyone is working on them. China is developing its own cryptocurrency. Europe is planning a digital euro, and Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as a currency alongside the dollar. The system is taking over Bitcoin and institutionalizing Nakamoto's anti-system currency. Traceability, immediacy, programmability, the central bank's digital currencies are intended to revolutionize cash.
On voit des entités comme les États, et notamment des États totalitaires, être tentés d'avoir leur propre crypto-monnaie pour améliorer leur contrôle sur la vie privée des gens et leur contrôle sur l'économie. Et d'ailleurs, les tentations des États démocratiques européens d'émettre leur propre monnaie digitale, c'est un petit peu pour la même chose quand même. C'est aussi pour améliorer leur contrôle sur la vie des gens et pour améliorer leur contrôle sur l'économie. Pas de manière totalitaire comme en Chine, mais il y a quand même une logique similaire.
China's full-scale test of the e-yuan suggests that cryptocurrencies are the logical next step in the evolution of money. More than $1 billion of transactions carried out in just a few months. Its success is clear, and the e-yuan now only awaits deployment at a national level. A victory for the Chinese government, but probably a setback for its population, whose every move is already strictly controlled by an all-powerful state and its social credit system.
En Occident, on a d'un côté Facebook, WhatsApp, ses comptes bancaires, ses abonnements à des journaux, ses dépenses sur des sites d'achat, etc. Le modèle chinois, c'est d'avoir mis tout ensemble. Et tout ensemble dans un pays qui respecte très peu les libertés individuelles, comme on le sait. Ce qui veut dire, très concrètement, un accès à l'ensemble de la vie des personnes qui est rendu possible par le fait que tout est dématérialisé, donc tout laisse une trace électronique. Ces traces électroniques sont transformées, entre autres, dans ce que les Chinois appellent un score social, qui est une note fabriquée à partir de toute une série de comportements que ces applications mettent ensemble. Et ce score social a des effets très concrets sur votre vie de consommateur. Certaines choses vont vous coûter plus cher que d'autres. Parfois, ça peut aller jusqu'à l'interdiction de prendre les transports. Vous allez arriver à l'aéroport et on va vous dire « Ah non, vous êtes interdit de monter dans l'avion parce que vous n'avez pas payé une amende ou autre ». Donc là, on voit vraiment un risque très important sur la vie privée, sur les libertés individuelles, si ces outils techniques sont utilisés à des fins de surveillance.
What's surprising isn't that China is building a totalitarian financial surveillance system. They are a totalitarian society. What is surprising is that European authorities and American authorities and Japanese authorities are also considering, and in some cases gleefully anticipating, the eradication of cash and the ability to do surveillance and control of all financial payments from every point to every point.
The private sector has also embraced the subject. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, all have launched tests and set up cryptocurrency projects. Incredible when you think that Bitcoin was coded as a reaction to the financial sector. In June 2019, Facebook unveiled its own cryptocurrency project, Libra. The idea is simple: to give any one of its users the ability to transfer money as easily as sending a text.
As we sit here, there are more than 1 billion people around the world who don't have access to a bank account, but could through mobile phones if the right system existed.
Les données personnelles aujourd'hui, c'est assez intéressant puisqu'on se rend compte que, en réalité, ça a énormément de valeur, mais peu de gens en sont conscients. On utilise des applications, on interagit, on like, on tweet, on partage, on poste, et pour autant, on ne gagne rien financièrement, alors que les entreprises qui fournissent ces plateformes s'enrichissent grâce à ça.
The idea behind Libra is that sending money should be as easy and secure as sending a message. Libra will be a global payment system, fully backed by a reserve of cash and highly liquid assets.
Et si Facebook se dote de sa monnaie, ce qui va se passer, c'est que tout ce qui tient du financier va également être connu par Facebook. Ça, c'est super pour ces applications qui vont pouvoir apprendre encore mieux à nous connaître, nous proposer plus de services, vendre et générer du profit avec ça. Mais en plus de ça, ils ont une intime compréhension de qui nous sommes.
In 2020, Libra changed name and became Diem. Scheduled for the end of 2021, this cryptocurrency promises to be monopolistic, operated by a consortium of companies. And this from one of the most controversial digital players when it comes to handling personal data.
Now, I believe that this is something that needs to get built, but I get that I'm not the ideal messenger for this right now. We've faced a lot of issues over the past few years, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who wish it were anyone but Facebook who are helping to propose this.
Si le nombre d'utilisateurs devient exponentiel, les ministères des Finances n'auront plus le monopole du contrôle de la monnaie, de la politique monétaire. Et là, pour de vrai, se posera la question de savoir qui peut diriger l'économie.
But there's a reason that we care about this, and that's because Facebook is about putting power in people's hands.
Diriger la monnaie, c'est diriger le crédit, c'est dire aux banques quelles doivent être leurs politiques. Et donc, ça a des effets très importants sur l'économie dans son ensemble. Et ça, je ne suis pas tout à fait sûre que les GAFA, quand elles veulent développer leur monnaie, souhaitent aller jusque-là. Mais peut-être qu'elles ont aussi ce type d'ambition, en se disant qu'elles peuvent promouvoir d'autres types d'économies, diriger l'argent dans des directions qui leur semblent meilleures que ce que feraient des gouvernements. La difficulté, c'est qu'elles ne sont pas élues, ces GAFA, donc leur choix de faire mieux que les autres, ce sera en fonction de leurs propres valeurs, valeurs qui n'auront été validées par personne d'autre qu'elles-mêmes.
With Bitcoin, the cypherpunks hope to empower users of digital currencies and protect their privacy. Now the web giants are taking over their creation, giving rise to a dystopia worse than they ever imagined. A world where capturing personal data has become a new goldmine for these behemoths. Will the financial and advertising power of private companies such as Facebook destroy the cypherpunks' dream once and for all? Or will the transparent code and decentralization contained within Bitcoin provide the solution Satoshi Nakamoto held so dear?
Le moyen de s'en sortir, parce que bien entendu, oui, il y a des problèmes, mais il y a aussi énormément de solutions, c'est de commencer petit à petit à adopter des applications qui sont open source, des applications qui sont respectueuses de la vie privée, des applications qui sont transparentes.
Open source technology means that the software itself is composed of codes that can be openly inspected by everyone and in a collaborative and public fashion that is very, very transparent.
For the cypherpunks, it was second nature to code together, to co-create tools open to all and share them openly. It was only under these conditions, they said, that Bitcoin could develop, grow and fulfill its role as an autonomous currency that respects privacy.
In Bitcoin, what we're aiming to do is have a decentralized decision-making system so that it's a community that decides, okay, what goes in, what changes get made, what shouldn't we do, etc. And anybody can participate, anybody can propose what they think is good changes. That said, it is deeply context heavy. It is a very specific, complex piece of technology.
The people you are working with, collaborating with, and in some cases even competing with, are world-class cryptographers, world-class software engineers at the top of their game.
Above all, Bitcoin was a project intended to create a common good, to build a community. When Satoshi Nakamoto put the Bitcoin code online, he ensured that everyone had the right to help it evolve and progress. The program's decentralization is absolute. There is a significant detail. No one really knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Many people, journalists and amateurs, have tried to find out who was hiding behind the pseudonym. To this day, no one has an answer. Nor has anyone made an official, irrefutable claim to being Satoshi Nakamoto. It is entirely possible that Bitcoin is the result of a collective effort rather than the work of a single individual. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. The shared system matters more than the individual who created it.
La disparition de Satoshi Nakamoto fait que ça donne à la communauté une espèce d'autonomie. Il n'y a aucune figure d'autorité, aucune figure centrale vers laquelle on peut se retourner en cas de problème ou pour prendre des décisions difficiles. Ça crée une indépendance et une valeur pour le réseau Bitcoin que d'autres protocoles n'ont pas puisqu'on connaît leur fondateur. Le Bitcoin, si Satoshi Nakamoto existait et qu'on connaissait son identité, il n'aurait pas le potentiel et l'impact qu'il a actuellement et qu'il aura dans l'avenir.
Meanwhile, the Bitcoin market continues to break records, for example in March 2021. Yet its value remains extremely volatile. falling by 50% in the weeks that followed, without, however, scaring off all investors.
What we're talking about this year is serious investors adopting Bitcoin. We're seeing big banks coming out saying officially that Bitcoin should be part of a portfolio. That's big news. That's actually very serious. We've got private companies like MicroStrategy was the first one that really sparked this. But now also with Tesla and such getting involved, buying very large amounts of Bitcoins, like hundreds of millions or billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and calling it an investment into the future. I think the next type is going to be finally more consumer adoption.
It's already money. It already works. You can use it. We're trying to improve it. We're trying to iterate. We're trying to make it more accessible. We're trying to make it more robust. If Bitcoin is to succeed, we might see this play out during our lifetime, but it should last far, far beyond our lifetimes.
What has happened is we are still on the very, very early stages of a fundamentally disruptive and revolutionary technology that transforms one of the most ancient technologies we have on this planet, the technology of money. Right now, it's difficult to use, it's complicated, it's understood by a tiny fraction of the human population, and it will change the world.
From the moment Satoshi Nakamoto sent his first message, which went almost unnoticed on a mailing list frequented by a handful of cypherpunks, all the way to Facebook's DM, from the dubious backstreets of Silk Road and WikiLeaks to the billionaires of Silicon Valley, Bitcoin has come a long way. The trail it blazed has become a trench fought over by increasingly significant public and private interests. In a digital world where physical money may disappear completely in the next few decades, Bitcoin continues to offer everyone a way of preserving the privacy of their financial transactions. But it has also given governments and big business new tools that will help them assert their power over the economy and over individual lives. Who will emerge victorious from this battle? It's impossible to predict, but Bitcoin has shown that now, without us even realizing it, cryptocurrencies are at the heart of our future.